All right, so we're diving into this civil war that seems to be brewing in MAGA world. It's billionaires versus the working class, and it's in a movement that's known for its populist roots. So it's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, you've got these really prominent figures on one side like Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, and then you have Sriram Krishnan, who's Trump's AI advisor. They're pushing for this vision of America that they say is more efficient and excellent.
Right.
And what's interesting is that this often involves a reliance on immigration, which kind of clashes with the more traditional MAGA stance we've seen.
Exactly. And that's where you get pushback from these kind of more established voices in the MAGA world, people like Mike Cernovich, Nikki Haley, and Laura Loomer.
Yeah, they're really worried about the impact of these ideas on American workers and traditional values.
Hmm.
And this conflict really came to a head, I think, with Trump's appointment of Sriram Krishnan. His past support for easing green card caps, I think, sparked some immediate backlash, particularly from folks who are concerned about the H-1B visas and the perceived influx of foreign tech workers.
And then Ramaswamy, who is himself an immigrant, jumps into this already tense situation. And he's saying that American culture is too focused on mediocrity.
Yeah.
He's saying we need a Sputnik moment to embrace nerdiness and excellence.
And he chose to illustrate this point on Elon Musk's X, no less, with this pretty provocative analogy of prom queens versus math Olympiad champions.
Okay.
Talk about pouring gasoline on a fire.
Yeah, it definitely struck a nerve. Why do you think this particular analogy resonated with some and alienated others?
Well, I think it taps into this deeper anxiety about the perceived devaluation of traditional American values and achievements. In the face of things like globalization and the rapid advancement of technology, for some people, this emphasis on nerdiness feels like a rejection of the values and skills they hold dear.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. So it's not just about immigration, it's about a sense of cultural displacement.
Exactly. And it's this underlying tension that's fueling this whole debate around the H-1B visas. Many people see those visas as favoring foreign tech workers, especially from India, over American workers.
So how do these more traditional MAGA voices respond to this? I mentioned Mike Cernovich and Nikki Haley earlier.
Right. So Cernovich, he directly challenged Ramaswamy. And he argued that, past American generations achieved greatness without having to rely on H-1B visas. And he questioned, why is everyone so eager to come to America if it's supposedly so terrible?
Haley's taking a bit of a different approach, right?
Yeah, she's emphasizing the need to prioritize American workers. She stated very directly that there is nothing wrong with American workers or American culture. It's a very clear pushback against this idea that America needs to fundamentally change.
Interesting.
And then you've got someone like Laura Loomer, right? She represents like a much more hardline stance on immigration. She's essentially advocating for closing the borders. She's arguing that, the little guy is being totally forgotten in this whole conversation.
It really seems like this whole clash over immigration is really just a symptom of this larger shift that's happening within the MAGA
Yeah.
movement. It's almost like the early adopters are feeling alienated by these new voices and ideas.
Yeah, exactly. And you see figures like Brendan Dilley, who's a conservative commentator. He very pointedly asked, the tech bros who took 8 years to realize Trump isn't the enemy are now lecturing the MAGA patriots who were there all along. So there's definitely a sense that the movement is being hijacked by these Silicon Valley elites.
So is this just a clash of personalities, or are there like deeper ideological differences at play here?
It's probably a bit of both, right? On the surface, you have this very obvious culture clash between the old guard and this new elite. But beneath that, I think there are some fundamental differences in how they view things like the role of government, the importance of national identity, and even just the definition of American success.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not just about who gets a seat at the table, but who gets to define what MAGA actually stands for in Trump's second term.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting because this internal conflict has some very real implications for policy. We're talking about immigration labor priorities, the future of the American worker. All of those issues are deeply intertwined with this whole power struggle.
Yeah, so what does all of this mean for the future of the MAGA movement and maybe even American politics as a whole?
Well, that's $1 million question, right? If these factions can't find some way to reconcile their differences, it could very well lead to a fracture within the movement.
And a fractured MAGA movement could have major ripple effects across the entire Republican Party. We've already seen how influential the movement has been in shaping the GOP's direction. Imagine what happens if that movement suddenly becomes divided.
It's a real possibility, and it raises some fascinating questions about the future of American conservatism. Will it be defined by this kind of populist, nationalist vision that initially propelled Trump to victory? Or will it embrace this more global, tech-driven approach?
So ultimately, who gets to decide? Is it the grassroots, the working class base that formed the core of the MAGA movement? Or is it the billionaire donors and the tech entrepreneurs who are increasingly influential within the party?
These are questions that are going to be debated and fought over for years to come, and the answers will have a really profound impact on the direction of American politics.
Well, there you have it, folks. A deep dive into this MAGA civil war and what it means for America. But as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought. So we've been talking about this clash between different visions for America's future. And it seems like both sides really believe they're fighting for what's best.
Yeah.
But I guess that begs the question, how do we even define best in this context?